Max Blumenthal has been pretty vocally recently. He's always kind of vocal, but in reference to RFK Jr.'s position on Israel and Palestine, he's been very vocal about this, mainly via Twitter. He's talked about this before on Rising as well, and mainly because RFK Jr., for whatever reason, has not chosen to sit down and have this discussion with Max, which I think is a mistake. I think he should have that discussion with him. So Max took to Twitter. Now, this is in reference to this event that RFK Jr. Was at with Rabbi Shmuley in New York City. There were two attendees that went to that event. They came on last week to talk about their experience. And one of them actually posed a question to RFK Jr. about the Palestinian journalist who was a U.S. citizen that was murdered. But Max Blumenthal also had some things to say about this event, and I want to go ahead and get started with that. So he retweeted this clip, and I'll show you the clip in just a second. Watch RFK Jr. demolish his credibility as a peace candidate in 4.5 minutes. So I'm going to go to the clip, and then we're going to come back to what Max said. Oh, and by the way, for the people who will tell me he never said he was a peace candidate, that's actually a lie. In fact, Misty quote tweeted that, screenshot that. I can show you that too if you need it. He actually did say that. Let's go on.
We're going to let him speak. Whether I don't agree with Bobby on the vaccines, I'm quintuple vaxxed. I don't agree with Bobby on Ukraine. I am. And by the way, if I pop off in the middle of the speech, then you guys will know I shouldn't have had them. And if I make it to the end, who knows? But we don't have to agree because that's the whole point.
Israel, as you know, is the only place in the Mideast where there's freedom of expression for all citizens. It's the only place where women have rights. As you know, this week, people in Iran are being jailed. Women are being jailed for wearing habibs or not wearing habibs. It's the only place where gays have rights. There was 2 weeks ago a gay pride parade in Israel with 150,000 people in both Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. At the same time, the government of Iran is hanging gays from cherry pickers and castrating them. The conduct of the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, when they go into Palestinian territories is beyond anything in the world. Colonel Camp, one of the leading military historians and tacticians around the world, said, last week, 2 weeks ago, when Israel went to Jenin, Jenin is a bomb factory. Most nations, Russia, when it was dealing with issues like Jenin and Chechnya, simply bombed the neighborhood because you have a neighborhood where virtually 100% of the people who live there are supporting terrorism, where the terrorists are hiding behind civilians, and where everybody is involved in bomb making. And those bombs are destined to kill civilians, to be strapped on men, women, and children, and kill civilians in Israel. Most nations, and we've done this ourselves, and clearly Russia was doing it in Chechnya. Chechnya would go in there and bomb that neighborhood. What the Israeli IDF does is they send people to do retail combat, door to door, putting IDF soldiers at risk in order to avoid civilian casualties, collateral casualties. In the recent Jenin attack, there was 12 terrorists who were killed, all of them involved in bomb making, all of them involved in planning attacks on Jewish civilians, and not a single innocent person, child or civilian. Israel is unique in the Mideast for saying we're only going to attack military targets. And they're very...
Hold on to that piece right there. Only attack military targets. Hold on to that piece.
Very, very disciplined about doing so. Palestine, the Palestinian Authority, in contrast, follows a long tradition of deliberately targeting civilians. So anybody, and not only that, but they have a pay-to-slay policy. That is the official policy of the Palestinian Authority. If you kill a Jew, not a member of the IDF, if you kill any Jew, you are going to get awarded with pay for life. And if you go to jail or you're killed, your family will get payments for life.
Who is giving him this information? You see, this is why I think he won't talk to people like, this is why I think he will not talk to people like Max.
And the official policy of Hamas is the genocide of all the Jews. So they consider, and this, by the way, in 1948, when Israel was attacked at its birth, the plans were captured of Syria and Egypt and the other nations, and their plan was complete extermination of the Jews. They took the side of Hitler during World War II. They lost the war, and the practice and the policy of all those nations is to kill individual civilians, whereas Israel does the opposite. It only attacks military targets.
Okay, hold on to that piece that he said there, that they only attack military targets. And, people like Max who have been there, someone mentioned Kim Iverson. Kim Iverson also, if I remember correctly, also reported from the Gaza Strip at one point in time. Max has been there. There's a bunch of independent journalists that have been there, and they've seen the conflict in person and reported about it. So Max had some things to say. He said a campaign that began as a defiant broadside against the war state and censorship industrial complex has suddenly pivoted to a bellicose exercise in pandering to rich Lukidniks who seek war with Iran, the permanent violent war housing of Palestinians, and the criminalization of activism that challenges Israeli apartheid. RFK Jr.'s host, Shmuley, a professional race hustler and alleged financial fraudster who owes the existence of his one-man political operation to the fortune of Sheldon Adelson, the late ultra-Zionist oligarch who called for dropping a nuclear weapon on Iran. If RFK was not handed a massive wad of Benjamins to suck up to Shmuley, he was embarrassing himself for free because he was clearly out of his depth. During a rambling, militaristic diatribe, he referred to hijabs as habibs. Someone mentioned this I saw someone say this in the chat. I just couldn't grab it in time. Pronounce Chechnya as though he hadn't heard of the place until 20 minutes before the event, and offered a history of Israel's creation so cartoonishly propagandic it made Alan Dershowitz look like Elon Pop. RFK Jr. took it upon himself, or was taken on, to defend the Israeli army's brigade-sized invasion of Jenin, during which it bombed buildings with fighter jets and ran bulldozers through the middle of a refugee camp. He referred to the entire city as a bomb factory, justifying the invasion because, in his words, virtually 100% of the people there are supporting terrorism. According to RFK, everybody in Jenin is involved in bomb making. There are no civilians there at all. Therefore, all are legitimate targets. He did not seem to know that the Palestinian campaign of suicide bombing ended well over 15 years ago, or that the Palestinian Authority is legally forbidden from defending Palestinians from Israeli violence. Its primary function is to act as an occupation subcontractor. According to RFK Jr., the PA has an official pay to slay policy in which if you kill any Jew, you are going to get awarded with pay for life. Even professional AIPAC lobbyists shy away from this kind of baseless invective. The half-baked Hasbara escalated from there as RFK Jr. cited Richard Kemp, a former British Army officer who subsists on Israel lobby speaking fees, to claim the conduct of the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, when they go into Palestinian territories is beyond anything in the world. While Israeli army commanders openly adhere to the Daya doctrine, named for the
We're going to let him
Beirut.
speak.
Whoops. Oh, sorry, that started again. Named for the Beirut neighborhood Israel levied in 2006, and which calls for targeting Arab civilians in order to turn them against their leadership. RFK Jr. insisted that Israel's policy is to avoid civilian casualties. It exclusively attacks military targets. Sorry, I had to stop that video. It is hard to believe RFK Jr.'s ahistorical, belligerent line on Israel-Palestine was not bought and paid for by some pro-Israel billionaire, which means he's just as corruptible as any Democrat or GOP hack. But if he actually believes what he's saying, he's also at least as pro-war as they are. And this is a great point to mention. I really think it was a mistake, a huge mistake, for him, number one, to say he's a peace candidate. And by the way, he did. We're going to go ahead and debunk that now. Because Stuck in the Mid said RFK Jr. never ran as a peace candidate. Whoever told you that lied to you. And so here's Misty with the receipts. I told you, people always screenshot shit. Misty said, yes, he did. And here it is. I'll be speaking in NYC Tuesday at World Values Network, open to the public. Come watch me and Rabbi Shmuley dismantle establishment's craven attempt to use spurious anti-Semitism charges to derail the strongest peace and freedom candidate in 2 decades. I mean, it's just, at this point, I really do think he needs to have this conversation with Max Blumenthal. He's publicly invited him. And I've said this to you guys before. I have not seen him appear on any show that has a left audience. Any show that knows a lot, particularly about that issue, and will challenge him on it. Max knows a lot about this issue. He was there. Aaron knows a lot about this issue. They were there. They've been there. And they're both Jewish. Katie Halper knows a lot about this issue. And she's Jewish. You see what I'm saying? You're not seeing him have those conversations with those people. He ain't even got to come on here because that's not like my expertise. I'm still learning about it myself. But it's noticeable. And speaking of expertise, the Palestinian Network, they were the ones that kind of educated me to the fact that two-state solution is not viable. They were on again yesterday for our labor organizing summit. And I want to show you, I want you to hear from them. Now, here's Nick in Rome. And here's one of the members of the Palestinian Network. He's going to explain to you why this does not work. This was just yesterday. This is the second time they've come on RBN to break this down. So for those of you who may be confused or not sure about that issue, listen to what he is saying.
Same thing like with Palestine, like when I was earlier referring to the Netanyahu government, what is happening essentially right now, and this is yet to hit the public consciousness, but Palestinian analysts are talking about it in Arabic, is that there is a shadow state that is forming, of the right-wing nationalists in occupied Palestine. And they, because Israel does not have a concept, like Israel, first of all, we have to understand that Israel is expansionist. Like even on the Ergun, the terrorist org that I mentioned earlier, on their emblem, like their main emblem, they have it's not just Palestine, it's also Jordan, like on the emblem. So they are interested. And this is also evidenced by, 48, when Sinai, the peninsula in Egypt was occupied, when south of Lebanon was occupied. The Golan Heights, which belong to Syria, are still occupied. So their strategy is to expand beyond Palestine. They're not interested in just Palestine.
That part right there is very important for people to hear. It's not just about Palestine. So he is telling you, again, he is from the Palestinian Network. He is telling you that they're not just interested in Palestine, they're interested in territories outside of Palestine. So it's not going to stop there. This is the part that a lot of people are not talking about. And this is why when Nick and I interviewed Marianne Williamson, and Nick said, Marianne, when we talked to the Palestinian network and she got upset and said, don't mansplain to me, I have Palestinian friends too. She didn't let Nick give him the opportunity to finish saying everything that he was saying, which is, yes, you do need to talk to this network because they break this down very well. It is not just about Palestine. And another damn thing I'm going to say and make very clear. A lot of people are also looking over the fact that there are also issues with Ethiopian Jews that are also there, and they're pushing them out too. It's not just about the Palestinians. And a lot of people don't talk about that. A lot of people don't. We played the videos on here, guys. The racism that they were going through. Let me let him finish because he's not done yet.
In beyond, Palestine, and so we know from the beginning that their project has failed, because they're limited to Palestine. But there is a right wing that is being emboldened right now within the ranks of Zionists, the hardcore right wing. A lot of them happen to be very religious and messianic. They're aligned also with Christian Zionists here in the U.S. because they believe that everything that they're doing will bring, the Messiah to return. But so effectively, there is a governance, like the 67, what is called the West Bank, is effectively governed under Smotrich, which is, the Israeli minister, I believe, for finance. So there is no such thing as two-state. There is no such thing as peace process. Even the PA, what we call the Palestinian Authority, is actually the most anti-Palestinian. I really respect Black folks, when they say, not all skin folk are kinfolk. We have the same dilemma when it comes to Palestinian liberation.
You heard that? There is this whole idea of a two-state solution. You need to hear from people who understand. This is the thing, guys, there's too many settlements. He's letting you know there's no way. It will not work. So all these politicians running on, oh, yes, a two-state solution. This is how he educated me. Because I used to believe the same thing. Oh, yeah, two-state solution. I had to educate myself. I had to learn. I had to grow. I'm not ashamed to admit that. So people learn and they grow. But they educated me and made me understand, oh, my God, this is not possible. No, it's not. And you can't let it get to the point where you like a candidate so much that you are afraid to criticize them. And that I saw that happen with Bernie Sanders, and I saw that shit happen with Barack Obama. And I'm trying to tell you now, I know a lot of you do like RFK Jr. It's your call to like who you like, but don't let it get to the point where you like them so much that you can't criticize them where they are wrong. And on this particular issue, he is wrong. Let me let him finish here, and then I'll show you another piece.
Our leaders, Palestinian Authority, do not represent the aspirations of Palestinians for liberation. In fact, they are part of the Zionist entity, and they work.
That's a great point.
They do security coordination with the Zionist entity after Oslo, happened, which liquidated the Palestinian cause and Palestinian rights. So for Palestinians, there's a reason why Hamas wins elections. There's a reason, and it's because Hamas picks up armed resistance and moves with the people and does, work towards Palestinian aspirations of nationhood and self-determination.
There you go. Now you can see that full video if you want to see the rest of that conversation, because that's on RBN. That was yesterday. How do I get rid of the top chat back there? That was yesterday. The Labor Organizing Summit Part 2. That's the one that features Shama Sawant. So we broke that up into two different segments. So the summit was from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. And this Part 2 started at 4 p.m. I'm on here somewhere later on in the summit. I talked to the UPS Teamsters yesterday. Now, shout out to Lucy, because Lucy also had some screenshots. Even some of RFK Jr. supporters are calling him out on this issue. Look at this. It's simple, RFK Jr., revise your position. Your own fans want you to. Here's Leon. He's so disappointing, but I guess I didn't know enough about him at first. Christine, so wrong. I wish he revealed all of this at the beginning so I wouldn't have considered him as an option a few months back. You know what else was interesting? When I covered his announcement on the ground here in Boston, he didn't talk about this. I wonder why. I make sure I showed all the patrons. I got one more ticker to show. Okay. There's more. Alexander says, very disappointed with RFK Jr. bias and going out of his way to disregard justice for Palestinians, not trustful anymore. I hope someday RFK Jr. learned the truth from Miko Palid. Not long ago, RFK Jr. was seen as the only hope for America, but has shown that he's not like her father or uncle. Now, many are very disappointed that he cannot see reality and how much Palestinians have suffered. Another one. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has lost all credibility with me. I question all of his statements after such a shameful performance. Please know it just makes me nauseous. I really loved RFK. What in tarnation? For those who don't know, like tarnation is like a Southern. Some people say that down South. Like, what in tarnation? Bobby Bro says sickening. Barry says his Jenin statement is a huge disappointment. Blue Moon says these are your fans, RFK Jr. Revise your position. This is why he lost my vote and support. The only problem with your analysis, sir, is that it is an apartheid state. What else would you call it? I feel great admiration and loyalty to you on every issue so far, and because of the very person that you are, but we couldn't be further apart on this one. The Israelis have been carrying forth a smash and grab on Palestinian land for decades, a process that continues to this day. Palestine is the new Warsaw Ghetto, and it's shameful for the Jews to play the Nazi in this scenario, and shameful for you to support them in that, no matter how many anti-Semite smears are thrown your way by despicable grifters in the Democratic Party. If the Dems succeed in keeping you in the dark on this one, then I can only surmise that they will succeed in keeping you away from the nomination as well. He has to come to his senses on Palestine and Israel. This is insanity. He will not get the votes. The majority of people do not support Israel's genocide of Palestinian people. Wake up, RFK Jr. And it goes on and on and on and on and on and on. I don't have time to go through all of them, but there's a lot like that. If you have not had a chance to do so, smash that like button, guys. And then I'm just going to go ahead and check comments here. I want to make sure I got everybody's chat. Thank you, Marvin. Shmuley is RFK Jr.'s handler. Stay in line, get AIPAC money. Thanks, Frank. Did RFK just say that Israel was the only place in the Middle East that supports human rights? WTF. Thank you, Marvin. AIPAC influencing our election again, agents for Israel. JB says Israel is colonialist. Basically what the U.S. did to Guam, Samoa, Virgin Islands, Philippines. Good points, JB. Thank you, Webb. Isn't it interesting that RFK talks about the expansion of NATO over the years and not that of Israel? Hit me with it one more time. Webb, hit me with it one more time. Thank you. Yes, indeed. She's Black says, see, he actually knows exactly what he's doing. There you go. And thank you, Steve, for the super sticker.